For privacy reasons, names and places have been changed. This story is inspired by true events.
On the evening of a warm summer night in 2003, 30-year-old Yvonne Caro, a dedicated mother and server, brought her child to the vibrant Santa Monica Pier for a simple outing. They never returned home. Despite an extensive investigation and a desperate search across land and sea, Yvonne and her child vanished without a trace from one of California's most iconic landmarks. Their sedan remained untouched in the garage, a silent testament to an inexplicable disappearance. For 14 agonizing years, the Caro family endured the crushing weight of uncertainty, haunted by an empty house. Then in 2017, after a ferocious king tide, a rusted stroller frame washed ashore, its wheels packed with ancient kelp, a chilling and undeniable link to the past. This is the complete investigation into what truly happened to Yvonne Caro and her child. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from, and if you enjoy this content, consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Now let's continue. Santa Monica, California, in the summer of 2003, shimmered with its characteristic coastal allure. Golden sunlight gave way to the soft glow of twilight, painting the iconic pier in hues of orange and purple. Families strolled along the boardwalk, the air filled with the laughter of children and the distant murmur of the Pacific Ocean. It was a scene of quintessential Californian serenity, a place where everyday life unfolded against a backdrop of sun and surf. For Yvonne Caro, a 30-year-old server and devoted mother, such an evening was a familiar comfort. Her life, though perhaps unremarkable to an outsider, was rich with the simple routines of work and raising her child. On one particular warm summer night, Yvonne embarked on what appeared to be another one of these ordinary outings, a trip to the bustling Santa Monica Pier with her young child. The evening unfolded like countless others, a simple pleasure culminating in a visit to the pier's vibrant attractions. The sounds of the carousel, a symphony of calliope music and joyful shouts, would have surrounded them as they enjoyed the atmosphere. Yet as the night wore on, the commonplace began to unravel into something far more sinister. The pier, typically a beacon of light and life, was about to become the scene of an unsettling enigma. At some point, the stroller, a mundane yet essential item for any parent, was discovered missing from its spot beside the spinning, brightly lit carousel. It was an absence that spoke volumes, a void where a family's most precious possession should have been. The immediate search yielded nothing but growing unease. The family had seemingly vanished from one of the most public and populated spaces in Southern California. The perplexity deepened with the discovery that Yvonne Caro's sedan remained untouched in the family garage back home. This crucial detail immediately dismissed any notion of a simple departure by road, transforming a possible misplacement into an outright disappearance. The initial confusion quickly gave way to a chilling sense of alarm, as those who realized the family was missing grappled with an inexplicable void. Yvonne Caro and her child had evaporated into the warm Santa Monica night, leaving behind only questions and an unsettling silence where laughter and life had been just hours before. The idyllic setting had abruptly become the stage for a profound and disturbing mystery. The alarm that swept across the Santa Monica Pier quickly escalated into an official police response. Squad cars converged on the scene, their flashing lights casting an urgent pallor over the vibrant night. Officers immediately initiated a systematic sweep of the pier and its immediate surroundings, questioning vendors, tourists, and staff who had been present during the critical hours. Every carousel rider, every passerby, became a potential witness to a vanishing act. Yet, despite the meticulous initial efforts, the vast public space yielded no immediate answers, no obvious signs of struggle, and no trace of Yvonne Caro or her child. Investigators, facing a case with no body, no ransom note, and no apparent struggle at the last known location, were forced to consider a spectrum of possibilities. Was it an abduction, a calculated snatch from a crowded public area? Could it have been a voluntary disappearance, an unthinkable act for a devoted mother? Or had a tragic, unforeseen accident occurred, somehow consuming both Yvonne and her child? Without a single witness, each theory presented its own daunting set of challenges, particularly in the absence of any tangible evidence to steer the inquiry. Among those interviewed was Ronnie Tiller, a pier guard whose regular patrols often placed him in close proximity to the carousel. Tiller confirmed seeing families enjoying the evening, but could recall nothing specific or unusual about Yvonne Caro or her child. His testimony, like that of many others, offered no crucial details, only a confirmation of the pier's usual, bustling activity. Back at Yvonne Caro's home, forensic teams meticulously processed the sedan and her personal effects. Every item was scrutinized for clues: a misplaced note, a disturbed object, anything that might indicate foul play or a planned departure. However, the sedan remained exactly as it had been left, an inert object in the garage, offering no further insight into the family's fate. The house itself revealed no signs of forced entry, no struggle, nothing to suggest a violent crime had transpired there. The lack of definitive evidence was, in itself, a confounding factor. As the initial hours stretched into days, the search efforts expanded beyond the pier, reaching out to local hospitals, shelters, and transportation hubs. Without a clear direction or a specific lead, however, the vastness of Southern California quickly swallowed these efforts. The investigation, hampered by a critical absence of evidence, found itself adrift, struggling to find an anchor in the perplexing void left by a mother and child who had simply vanished. As the weeks bled into months, and then into years, the initial fervor surrounding the disappearance of Yvonne Caro and her child inevitably began to wane. The exhaustive searches of the pier, the interviews with every conceivable witness, and the forensic examination of the Caro residence had all yielded the same frustrating result. Nothing, without a body, a motive, or even a single tangible clue to guide them, investigators found themselves navigating an ever-expanding void. Tips, once numerous and urgent, slowed to a trickle, eventually ceasing altogether. Each new lead proved to be a dead end, each theory crumbling under the weight of absent evidence. The case, once at the forefront of local news, gradually receded from public consciousness, replaced by more immediate headlines. For the community of Santa Monica, the vanishing of a mother and child from its iconic pier transformed into a chilling local legend, a cautionary tale whispered in hushed tones. It became a permanent fixture in the roster of unsolved mysteries, a stark reminder of the fragile line between everyday joy and inexplicable tragedy. The questions lingered, echoing silently through the city's bustling streets. What truly happened that warm summer night? How could two people simply evaporate without a trace from such a public place? The passage of time brought with it an unbearable anguish for any surviving family members. Initial pleas for information, broadcast with desperate hope, slowly gave way to a quiet, agonizing vigil. The relentless march of the calendar pages eroded not only the active investigation, but also the fragile threads of hope that Yvonne and her child might still be found alive. The painful reality of their prolonged absence settled in, a heavy shroud of grief and uncertainty. Eventually, with all active leads exhausted and no new information surfacing, the investigation into the disappearance of Yvonne Caro and her child was formally reclassified. The extensive files, once a daily focus of detectives, were meticulously cataloged and moved to the cold case archives. There, in the sterile silence of storage, they awaited an elusive break, a single piece of evidence that might, years or even decades later, reignite the inquiry. The Santa Monica Pier continued its vibrant existence, a place of laughter and light, but for those who remembered, it forever held the unspoken promise of answers, locked away somewhere in the vastness of the ocean or the depths of human deception. 14 years had passed since Yvonne Caro and her child vanished from the Santa Monica Pier. A decade and a half of silence had settled over the case, the cold files gathering dust, their contents a testament to an enduring mystery. Then, in the late autumn of 2017, the Pacific Ocean, a vast and indifferent keeper of secrets, decided to relinquish one of its own. A series of powerful G tides, phenomena of exceptional height and strength, surged along the southern California coast. These tides, driven by gravitational forces and atmospheric conditions, scoured the ocean floor and dragged long-lost debris from its depths, depositing it onto the beaches. The sheer power of the water reshaped the coastline, revealing what had been hidden for years beneath the waves and sand. It was amidst this dramatic natural event that an unexpected discovery was made. The morning after one particularly forceful tide, as the ocean receded, a strange object lay half buried in the wet sand, just beyond the reach of the gentle surf. It was the skeletal remains of a stroller, heavily encrusted with marine growth and corroded by years of saltwater immersion. Its once vibrant colors were long gone, replaced by a uniform deep rust. The fabric had disintegrated, leaving only the metal frame bent and twisted, a ghostly silhouette of its former function. Its wheels, though still attached, were jammed solid, packed tightly with a dense, matted tangle of kelp, clear evidence of its long sojourn beneath the surface. The find was made by Stingray Cole, a local surf photographer known for his unwavering dedication to capturing the ocean's raw beauty. Cole, accustomed to documenting the unusual debris brought in by king tides, immediately recognized the unsettling nature of the stroller. It was not merely discarded trash. Its condition suggested a much older, more profound story. He documented the discovery with his camera, then alerted local authorities. The rusted frame, once identified as a model consistent with the period of Yvonne Caro's disappearance, sent a shockwave through the Santa Monica Police Department. The cold case, dormant for so long, was abruptly ripped open. The stroller confirmed what had long been feared. Yvonne Caro and her child had indeed entered the ocean. It was a harrowing validation of the most tragic hypothesis, yet it offered no immediate answers to the fundamental questions that had plagued investigators for years. How had it entered the water? Was it an accident, a deliberate act, or something else entirely? The ocean had given up a piece of the puzzle, but the full picture remained agonizingly out of reach, shrouded in the depths from which the stroller had emerged. The discovery of the kelp-bound stroller dramatically reanimated the dormant investigation into Yvonne Caro's disappearance. What had been a cold case, relegated to archival boxes for 14 years, suddenly surged back to the forefront of the Santa Monica Police Department's priorities. Detectives who had long since moved on to other cases, or even retired, found themselves re-engaged, facing the ghosts of a mystery they had once believed unsolvable. The rusted frame represented the first tangible piece of evidence in over a decade, a physical link to the tragic events of that summer night in 2003, and it provided a renewed, albeit grim, sense of purpose. The stroller, once carefully retrieved from the surf, became the focal point of an intensive forensic examination. Despite its advanced state of corrosion and degradation from prolonged submersion, specialists at the crime lab meticulously processed every inch of the metal frame. Their task was painstaking: to extract any possible trace evidence, however minute, that might have survived the ocean's relentless assault. They analyzed the rust patterns, hoping to discern the type of metal and the environment it had endured. Manufacturing details were scrutinized, not just to confirm its age and model, but to identify any unique features or modifications. The matted kelp and encrusted marine organisms were carefully removed and examined for microscopic clues, biological or otherwise, that could speak to the stroller's journey or its final moments before being swallowed by the sea. With the ocean now definitively established as the point where the family's journey had ended, investigators were compelled to reevaluate every prior theory. The possibility of a land-based abduction or voluntary disappearance, though never entirely dismissed, now seemed less likely. New hypotheses emerged, focusing on the mechanics of how the stroller and presumably Yvonne and her child entered the water. Was it a tragic accident, a momentary lapse of attention on the pier's edge? Or was it a deliberate act, the stroller pushed or thrown into the abyss, the confirmation of an ocean grave reframed? The entire narrative, forcing a reassessment of potential motives and methods. In the wake of the stroller's discovery, renewed search efforts were launched in the waters off the Santa Monica Pier and the adjacent breakwater. Marine units deployed sonar equipment, hoping to locate further remains or other objects that might have been carried by the same currents that returned the stroller. Divers explored specific areas identified by oceanographic models as potential points of origin or deposition, battling strong currents and limited visibility. These efforts, though extensive, proved challenging, given the vastness of the Pacific and the 14 years that had elapsed. Despite the breakthrough, the fundamental questions that had haunted the case for so long remained stubbornly unanswered. The stroller confirmed where their journey ended, but not how or why. Was Yvonne Caro responsible for her own and her child's fate, or were they victims of an unseen hand? The ocean had yielded a clue, but the full truth of that summer night continued to elude investigators, shrouded in the depths from which the rusted frame had so unexpectedly emerged. The forensic examination of the rusted stroller frame, though initially challenging, eventually yielded the elusive breakthrough investigators desperately sought. While the macro-level analysis revealed little beyond the effects of prolonged ocean immersion, it was under the microscopic lens that the case truly began to turn. Specializing in trace evidence, a dedicated forensic technician meticulously scraped and analyzed the heavily corroded axle of the stroller. Amidst the layers of rust and marine sediment, a virtually invisible detail emerged. Minuscule flecks of paint, no larger than grains of sand. These were not the original paint of the stroller itself, but foreign particles, distinct in their composition and color. The identification of these paint flecks represented a critical pivot. Initial analysis suggested a marine-grade paint, a type commonly used on watercraft. This immediately narrowed the scope, pointing away from land-based vehicles and firmly towards the ocean as not just the final resting place, but potentially the means of transport. Further, more sophisticated spectral analysis determined a precise chemical signature and color, a specific shade of teal green. This unique profile was then cross-referenced against databases of marine paints used in the region. The result was startling, a definitive match to the paint commonly applied to the rental skiffs operated from a local marina, specifically those docked at the Santa Monica harbor. The stroller, it now seemed clear, had not merely fallen into the ocean. It had interacted directly with a specific type of vessel, a rental skiff. This new evidence ignited a dormant line of inquiry. For years, investigators had considered the possibility of a boat, but without any specific lead, the idea was too broad to pursue effectively. Now armed with a precise link to rental skiffs, detectives turned their attention to the Santa Monica Harbor Marina logs, a trove of records that had previously seemed irrelevant. The task of sifting through 14 years of paper and digital entries was monumental, but the paint flecks provided a clear purpose. They searched for any unusual rentals around the time of Yvonne Caro's disappearance in 2003, focusing on after-hours activity that might have gone unnoticed by casual observation. Buried deep within the archives, a single entry stood out with chilling clarity. Dated just hours after Yvonne Caro and her child were last seen, the log detailed a late after-hours launch of a rental skiff. Such an activity was highly irregular for the marina, which typically closed operations at dusk. Even more suspicious was the notation accompanying the entry. The rental had been paid entirely in cash. This detail, a clear attempt to avoid a traceable transaction, screamed of deliberate obfuscation. May Ortega, the long-serving harbor master whose meticulous record-keeping had preserved this vital clue, was interviewed. Though her memory of the specific individual who made the rental had faded over the years, she distinctly recalled the unusual nature of the late-night, cash-only transaction. It was an anomaly, a breach of standard procedure, made more suspicious by the sheer amount of cash involved. This entry, once an obscure footnote in a dusty ledger, now served as the linchpin connecting the vanished family, the rusted stroller, and the vast, silent ocean to a calculated human act. The mystery of how they entered the water had finally begun to yield its terrifying truth. The disparate threads of the Caro family disappearance, once tangled and seemingly unrelated, now converged with chilling clarity. The microscopic flecks of marine paint, painstakingly recovered from the stroller's axle, linked directly to the teal-green hulls of rental skiffs at the Santa Monica harbor. This forensic precision, combined with the unearthed marina log detailing a late, after-hours launch paid for in untraceable cash, constructed a definitive pathway. It was no longer a matter of mere speculation. The stroller, and by extension Yvonne Caro and her child, had not simply fallen into the ocean from the pier. They had been deliberately taken out to sea. The evidence pointed unequivocally to a calculated act. A skiff, rented under suspicious circumstances, served as the vessel that transported the family beyond the breakwater. The timing, just hours after their last confirmed sighting on the pier, suggested a precise window of opportunity, exploiting the cover of darkness and the lax oversight of an after-hours transaction. The method of their entry into the vast Pacific was now understood, resolving one of the most perplexing aspects of the 14-year-old mystery. Yet, as one profound question found its answer, others, equally haunting, took its place. The detailed forensic and logistical investigation revealed how Yvonne Caro and her child entered the ocean, but it remained stubbornly silent on who was responsible for their forced departure, and perhaps most agonizingly, why such a horrific act was carried out. The identity of the individual or individuals who rented that skiff and orchestrated the disappearance remained concealed, lost to the passage of time and the deliberate obfuscation of a cash transaction. The ultimate fate of Yvonne Caro and her child, beyond the confirmation of their entry into the sea, also remained unaddressed by the evidence, leaving a void where closure should have been. The case of the vanished family from the Santa Monica Pier thus stands as a unique testament to the enduring nature of cold cases and the improbable ways in which truth can surface. It was the relentless power of a king tide, a natural phenomenon, that first brought the kelp-bound stroller back from the ocean's depths, providing the first tangible link in over a decade. This natural revelation, coupled with meticulous forensic work and the diligent preservation of seemingly mundane records by individuals like Harbor Master May Ortega, transformed an unsolvable mystery into a case with a terrifying, albeit incomplete, resolution. The Santa Monica Pier, once a symbol of carefree recreation, now carries the indelible mark of a family's disappearance, its shores forever whispering the tale of a secret held by the ocean, partially revealed, yet still shrouded in the chilling question of a perpetrator's motive and identity.